A federal judge has ordered the expedited processing of the Epstein files from the Department of Justice in response to a FOIA request, a Freedom of Information Act request. So, if the DOJ thought that it was going to, interpret the Epstein Transparency Act, where they're required to release the Epstein files in 30 days by the law that Trump was cornered like a rat and had to sign into law, if they thought, well, we're going to, not use these documents or this, or we're going to cherry pick, I guess what they didn't consider either is that also working its way through the federal court system were all of these private lawsuits that were filed by groups that made these Freedom of Information Act requests. And what's super interesting to now analyze, in light of the obligation under the Epstein Transparency Law to release these files, I think these FOIA requests right here that have been filed to release the Epstein files, what's the DOJ going to say when there's actually affirmative law for them to produce it? And I think that factored in to Judge Chutkan's ruling saying expedite the release of these files. You go, Judge Chutkan, that name sounds familiar. Yep, she was the federal judge who presided over the criminal case involving Trump's insurrection on January 6th and the related conduct. And that case was snatched away from her by the United States Supreme Court and ultimately the election when Trump was given absolute immunity. But let's just take a look at what Judge Chutkan ruled right here. Don't forget about these FOIA cases. Don't sleep on them because the federal judges certainly aren't. And Judge Chutkan says, in this Freedom of Information Act case, Democracy Forward seeks expedited review of FOIA requests regarding the Justice Department's handling of files relating to the Epstein investigation. After the department constructively denied its expedited review request, Democracy Forward filed this lawsuit, moved for summary judgment, because Democracy Forward has demonstrated that the department's handling of the Epstein files is, quote, a matter of widespread and exceptional media interest in which there exists possible questions about the government's integrity that affect public confidence. Its FOIA requests are largely entitled to expedited review. So then we take a look right here. And the court also says, the court notes that plaintiffs' notice of recent developments does not necessarily affect the court's review of the instant motion. In reviewing requests for expedited processing, the court's limited to the record before the agency at the time of the denial or the constructive denial. But what's interesting is I think for future objections, the court's going to go back and say, well, look at what just went down. And then the court goes on to talk about the categories. All materials prepared or compiled by DOJ officials for Attorney General Bondi's review regarding the Epstein matter. All briefing materials prepared for Attorney General Bondi for her meeting with Trump regarding the Jeffrey Epstein matter, including her May 2025 meeting at the White House. All records reflecting communication between the Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General, the Associate Attorney General, and senior aides to the Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General regarding the Epstein matter. All records reflecting communications between the FBI Director, Deputy Director, Associate Deputy Director, and senior aides to the Director regarding the Jeffrey Epstein matter. All records reflecting communications between a subset of aforementioned DOJ and FBI officials regarding the Epstein matter. Records reflecting all directives, guidance, and instructions provided by the FBI leadership to FBI personnel assigned to assist with the Epstein-related records review between March 14, 2025 and March 30th, 2025. Information regarding all staff assigned to review Epstein-related records, and all records reflecting all mentions of Trump within the Epstein-related records review. I want to bring in Harry Littman of the Talking Feds YouTube channel and Talking Feds podcast because, Harry, that right there is what's going to be focused on. And you and I are litigators, although I don't practice anymore. Those were very specific. Those were very well targeted. It almost seems that they've gotten some guidance, perhaps from some whistleblowers, about where some of the bodies are buried because it was very specific. And what I think is great is the way this interacts with now the Epstein transparency law, because what we'll be able to find, I think, through the document request I just showed you, what were the directives? Was there anything to delete the Trump-related files, hide Trump-related files? What communications were going on between Bondi and Trump? What was happening there? Harry, I think that if you're the DOJ, you're probably going to try to appeal this, delay this, assert all of your executive privilege and all of these things. But, that privilege gives way to compelling interest, which is what Judge Chutkan, said right there. And while Judge Chutkan specifically notes the new developments of the fact that this law now exists, while that doesn't impact this, I think in terms of the future posture of the DOJ, it can't not matter in some degree because they've agreed to turn over these records. They have to by law under the law. So Harry, break this down for us.
Okay, and Ben, I think the big point, and you make it as always, is the interrelationship between these two inquiries. Look, we have an expectation. We'll see what happens. That even though he was forced to knuckle under and agree to this law, that maybe he's expecting Bondi to serve as a kind of firewall and prevent things from coming out. But that process involving her and the Congress is very political. The individual members of Congress might or might not fight back, will probably not be in a court of law. This one, though, is adversarial. So there is a parallel in FOIA, and FOIA is this, notorious kind of, it's in the catacombs and a law unto itself with all these, people with big glasses going through all the possible exemptions. But there is in FOIA a parallel to what we think we may be seeing from Bondi in the stonewalled application of the new law. That is, I think it's exemption 7A, a pending law enforcement proceeding. But whereas in the already extant process, you've got political pressure, and you've got, I think it's very possible there'll be members of his own party. You'll certainly have Marjorie Taylor Greene pushing, but in a political way. This is a legal adversarial process. So the Democracy Forward, or the group that has brought this, they may come in. They've got to do it in an expedited way. That is the big victory. FOIA things can take years. So they come forward, and the administration asserts, let's say overly asserts, certain exemptions. There's a way to fight back, to push the administration, to have Judge Chutkan, by the way, as an aside, nice to see. It's like things have been going on so long. Judge Chutkan and Judge Boasberg are both in play this week, the sort of golden oldies from when there was real sort of scrutiny of Trump and company. But they'll forward exemptions. But for example, I think there's going to be quite a lot of documents that have nothing to do with these Democratic figures that Trump has just ordered up an investigation of. And Pam Bondi, who said there's no more investigation, all of a sudden, oh, yes, thank you, Mr. President. We'll assign this to the SDNY. She can easily, with no real downside, just blandly assert, oh, this is all covered by the investigation. If they try that with the parallel process of exemption 7A, they can get pushed on it, and really, the judge can rule otherwise. Let me look at this in camera. I don't think so. And it's going to be released. So the kind of possible legal compulsion and then the political pressure of the other, I think, combine. And as you say, the information that they've asked for at the end, which isn't covered by any investigation, let's just see flat out what kind of mischief you were up to. They'll try to interpose certain executive privileges and the like. They won't just roll over. But that's stuff that we might not otherwise see and could be unbelievably illuminating and damning. If I had my choice, that's the first thing I'd look at if it comes out.
Harry, a lot to go over there, and we know that Pam Bondi is going to try to do anything in her power to assert any type of objection. She's going to claim national security interests. She's going to create privacy.
That is a FOIA exemption, the first one.
And so she's going to make those claims. But look, the pressure is now coming from all sides right here. And ultimately we know that even though the Epstein transparency law says 30 days from last week at this point, the Trump administration, the regime always had the power to turn this over no matter what. You never even needed a law to do it. So the law in many ways just reflects the status quo and puts additional pressure on. But they were supposed to turn these documents over. Anyway. And so we have to cover this every step of the way. But before we go, Harry, anything else you want to say?
Yeah, well, I think you've first of all, even a very effective FOIA process and the dovetailing with the law, nobody ought to expect a New Year's or Christmas present of all these documents. Excuse me. At a minimum, they're gonna fight and the wheels of justice grind slowly. But every time it comes up, for starters, including every legal filing, that's another news cycle and what the Trump White House fears and loathes. And, it's just, as you say, the kind of pincer move of politics and law. Doesn't guarantee we see this, but makes it more likely. And, the whole country, as you and I are just have had our curiosity. So what is it for a guy who survived Access Hollywood and sexual assault charges and convictions and the like? What, man, oh man, what is in those documents? What made Pam Bondi first say, oh, it's on my desk, and oops, I was wrong, or the dog ate it? So, just the increase, the extra avenue of pressure, I think, is important. That said, you're right. They'll fight. They aren't necessarily candid. It'll be hand-to-hand combat in the trenches. But this arms the good guys with another important legal weapon.
Keep everybody posted each step of the way. Subscribe to Harry Litman's YouTube channel. It's called Talking Feds. The Talking Feds YouTube channel, the Talking Feds Substack, and the Talking Feds podcast. Thanks, Harry.
Hey, thank you, Ben. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.